Olivia and Ava, both in their early 20s, had been best friends for years. Olivia, with her striking blue eyes and long blonde hair, was the charismatic and outgoing one, always drawing attention wherever she went. Ava, quieter and more reserved, had a kindness in her brown eyes that made her easy to talk to. Despite their differences, they balanced each other perfectly, making their friendship one that seemed unbreakable. Olivia's father, Robert, was in his early 40s, a successful businessman who had raised her alone after the tragic death of her mother. Tall and handsome, with green eyes and a strong jawline, Robert was the kind of man who commanded respect. He was well-liked in their small town and admired for his dedication to his daughter. As Ava spent more time at Olivia's house, she began to see Robert in a new light. What had once been simple respect for a father figure slowly transformed into something deeper and more complicated. Ava couldn't help but notice his subtle charm, the way he seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. It started with small things, his hand lingering on her shoulder, the way he would look at her just a second too long. One evening, while Olivia was out, Robert and Ava found themselves alone in the living room. The conversation was casual at first, but the atmosphere was charged with an undercurrent of tension. The dim lighting, the soft crackle of the fireplace, it all felt too intimate. As they talked, Ava found herself opening up to Robert in ways she hadn't with anyone else. When he reached out and touched her hand, something snapped inside her, and before they knew it, they were kissing. The kiss was a turning point, one that neither of them could take back. From that night on, their relationship changed. They began an affair, meeting in secret whenever Olivia wasn't around. They were careful, but the thrill of the forbidden only made it more exciting. Ava knew it was wrong, but the way Robert made her feel, desired special, was intoxicating. Robert, for his part, was torn between guilt and desire. He knew he was betraying his daughter, but he couldn't bring himself to end the affair. Their affair continued for weeks, with Robert and Ava becoming more reckless as time went on. They met in hidden spots around town, careful to avoid being seen. The excitement of sneaking around, of keeping their secret from Olivia, only added to the intensity of their feelings. But the weight of their deception began to take its toll. Ava was consumed with guilt. She hated lying to Olivia, but every time she tried to end things with Robert, she found herself drawn back to him. Robert, too, was struggling. He loved his daughter more than anything, but his feelings for Ava were undeniable. He knew he was playing with fire, but he couldn't resist the pull. Olivia, sharp and intuitive, began to notice the changes in her father and her best friend. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but something was off. Robert was more distant, and Ava seemed nervous whenever they were together. Olivia started paying closer attention, watching the way they interacted when they thought she wasn't looking. The more she observed, the more convinced she became that something was going on between them. One night, Olivia returned home earlier than expected. As she walked past her father's bedroom, she noticed the door was slightly ajar. Quietly, she approached, and what she saw inside shattered her world. Ava was in Robert's bed, lying comfortably in his arms. For a moment, Olivia couldn't breathe. The sight of her best friend with her father was too much to process. She stumbled back to her room, her heart pounding, tears streaming down her face. The betrayal cut deep, leaving her feeling hurt, angry, and humiliated. Olivia spent the next few days in a haze of anger and pain. The betrayal by the two people she trusted most was unbearable. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. All she could think about was how they had deceived her, how they had shattered the trust she had in them. But as the pain turned into anger, she began to plot her revenge. She couldn't let them get away with what they had done. They needed to pay. Olivia knew her father kept a gun in the house, a relic from when he used to go hunting. The thought of using it terrified her, but the more she thought about what they had done, the more she became convinced that it was the only way to make them understand the depth of her pain. She decided to confront Ava first. Olivia invited her to the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a place they used to go when they were younger to escape and talk about their problems. Olivia told Ava she wanted to talk, that she was ready to forgive and move on, hoping to lure her into a false sense of security. Ava, desperate to make things right, agreed. When she arrived at the warehouse, she found Olivia waiting, her expression cold and unreadable. "I know about you and my dad," Olivia said, her voice calm but laced with fury. Ava's face went pale, and she stammered, "Olivia, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. It just happened." But Olivia wasn't interested in apologies. "You betrayed me, Ava. You both did. And now you're going to pay for it." Before Ava could react, Olivia pulled out the gun. Ava's eyes widened in terror as she backed away, her heart pounding in her chest. "Olivia, please don't do this. We can talk about it, we can fix this." But Olivia's mind was made up. She had been hurt too deeply to consider any other outcome. She aimed the gun at Ava, her hands steady despite the turmoil raging inside her. In a desperate attempt to save herself, Ava lunged at Olivia, trying to wrestle the gun from her hands. They struggled, the tension between them boiling over into a violent confrontation. In the chaos, a shot rang out. For a moment, everything was still. Then Ava collapsed to the ground, blood pooling around her. Olivia stared at her friend's lifeless body, the reality of what she had done slowly sinking in. The gun slipped from her hands as she fell to her knees, overcome with shock and grief. The sound of the gunshot had drawn the attention of a passerby, who quickly called the police. When they arrived, they found Olivia sitting beside Ava's body, her face pale and her eyes vacant. She didn't resist when they arrested her, too numb to care about what would happen next. The small town was rocked by the scandal. A father involved with his daughter's best friend, a daughter accused of murder, and a friendship destroyed by betrayal. At her trial, Olivia's defense team argued that she had been pushed to the brink by the betrayal of the two people she trusted most. They painted a picture of a young woman who had been deeply hurt and who had acted in a moment of emotional turmoil. The trial was a media sensation, with the town divided over whether Olivia was a cold-blooded killer or a victim of circumstance. Ava's family was devastated, and they pushed for the maximum penalty, arguing that Olivia had deliberately planned to kill Ava out of jealousy and rage. Robert, consumed with guilt, took the stand and admitted to the affair, but he pleaded with the court to show mercy on his daughter, acknowledging his role in the tragedy. Olivia, for her part, seemed lost throughout the trial. She had loved Ava like a sister, and now she was gone because of what Olivia had done. The guilt and grief weighed heavily on her, and she showed little emotion as the prosecution and defense made their cases. In the end, the jury found Olivia guilty of manslaughter, acknowledging that while her actions were premeditated, they were driven by intense emotional distress. The judge sentenced her to 10 years in prison, a decision that left the town divided. Some believed the sentence was too lenient, while others felt it was a tragic end to a situation that had spiraled out of control. Olivia's sentence marked the end of a chapter for the small town, but the scars of the tragedy would linger for years. Ava's family struggled to move on, their grief compounded by the knowledge that their daughter's life had been cut short by someone she had considered a friend. They left town soon after the trial, unable to bear the memories that haunted them. Robert, racked with guilt over his role in the tragedy, sold his business and moved away, unable to face the people who had once respected him. He visited Olivia in prison, but their relationship was strained, both of them unable to find the words to address what had happened. Robert knew that he had lost his daughter long before the trial had ended, and he would spend the rest of his life trying to come to terms with the consequences of his actions. As for Olivia, prison was a harsh reality, but it also offered her time to reflect on what she had done. She attended therapy sessions, trying to make sense of the anger and pain that had driven her to kill her best friend. The road to redemption was long and uncertain, but Olivia was determined to take it one step at a time. The story of Olivia, Ava, and Robert became a cautionary tale in the town, a reminder of how easily trust can be shattered and how the consequences of betrayal can be devastating. The small town would never forget the twisted bonds that had led to such a tragic outcome, and the legacy of that fateful night would linger in.